I would defy the prescriptions of identity that turn my wholeness into a woe. But socialized by the lies that they rely on to keep the systems of domination, categorized to maintain the hierarchy of power. Whoa. My true self shall be restored. One red light.
My name is Paola, and I'm a Puerto Rican transgender woman, and I like doing engineering, theater, and professional wrestling. I grew up in Arecibo, which is in the north area of Puerto Rico. I used to be very introverted when I was younger, and because of not meeting what society expected for boys, I was bullied a lot by other boys, and that created a sense of insecurity growing up, and also didn't feel safe. So convinced my dad to get me into martial arts. I began getting a passion for watching a lot of martial art movies on a local channel. One time I decided to stay up late, and I was flipping through channels, and that's when I discovered professional wrestling. For me, it was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. And then they were solving everything in a fight. I guess a part of me wanted to yeah, that's what I would like to do to my bullies in school, to body slam them. There were some martial arts movies that had women in them, and the woman will be doing the fighting. Back in the 80s, I think it was Cynthia Rothrock. She was kind of the big martial artist that was a woman at the time. Started watching Xena when I was in college. The fight scenes were very interesting too. When it came to wrestling, there were not many women wrestlers back then. I wasn't aware of them. And if there were, I think it was in Puerto Rico, I heard about La Tigresa. She was one of the major wrestlers in Puerto Rico. But it was not as extreme as it is today. Today you can watch WWE, and they have more women wrestlers of diverse background, diverse body types, and it's quite fantastic to watch women wrestling today than it was before. So my gender identity, that was something that I was keeping a secret. When I was around 5, I began hiding my sister's closet and my mom's closet. Even at 5, I knew that it was wrong because of church, because of the religious belief. Wrestling came in to help him hide those things. Who's going to expect that a wrestler that is brutal and angry all the time has a soft side inside that is dying to come out? I was driving from Arecibo to Mayagüez, and I passed by Isabela. It was a Sunday afternoon, and somehow there was a wrestling show right on the road. And I was like, I have 2 options right now. I can stop and ask, or I can continue and forget about this. But I guess at that point, my interest in wrestling was too strong, so I just pretty much found a way, did a U-turn, went back. After about 3 months, that's where I began doing my matches, and the rest is just pretty much history. I made the decision to transition because I felt like I needed to do it. I couldn't just continue living in denial of who I was. I understood the risk of doing that. You end up losing your job. In Puerto Rico, I have heard about transgender people getting killed. But at the same time, I couldn't continue denying myself. So I moved from Puerto Rico after I finished my master's to Troy, New York to pursue the PhD degree in environmental engineering. It was very difficult to get a job in engineering, and then transition genders didn't help, but I still want to think that people are good and people are going to be open and be accepting, and they are not going to deny somebody a job because of their own insecurities. But let's be honest, doesn't happen like that all the time. But at the same time, a part of my brain is like, okay, what can I do to find a way out of this? I thought that my workplace being a professional environment was going to be more accepting than wrestling, and I thought that wrestling, I was going to be rejected from wrestling because of what it was, but I was totally completely wrong. They had more concerns than people in wrestling. When I told my friends in wrestling, they were like, oh, okay, you be you, you know? And then at one point I decided it's time. And that's when I began doing my transition process. So another match, I came out and I told the fans, hey, you know what? I'm having fun with this. I'm going to allow myself to be me. A friend of mine contacted me. He asked me, hey, I'm doing a show here and I want to invite you, another transgender woman that I'm wrestling, to come and wrestle in my show. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm not the only one? Like, I'm not alone? So we do exist, we're in wrestling. When I was in high school, I taught myself how to juggle balls. And then like later on in life, I began teaching myself how to juggle other props like clubs and Diabolo. And then when I came back to wrestling, I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is my gimmick. I like the circus art, so why not combining the circus art into my gimmick? I was experimenting with face paint at one point. You know that in theater you have tragedy and comedy, that tragedy is sad, comedy is like happy. So I was kind of like, oh, maybe I can do like a face paint that shows I'm smiling, but at the same time I'm crying. And then at the tears, not to look like a clown per se, but more like a goth. And then I decided to add more color because why not show like a little bit of dissonance in there? That's why I created that character and changed the name to PJ the Whip Gonzalez. To make the character an easier connection to a circus, I decided to use the theme song of Entry of the Gladiators, so which makes perfect sense because we wrestlers are like the modern gladiators of the era. We bring entertainment in combat. For me, wrestling was like, okay, even though I don't fit the norm of gender, in wrestling, having muscles for me is a plus. I feel empowered every time I step in the ring and I wrestle, you know. I feel like I can be myself. I don't care if the fans don't like it or if the fans decide to boo me. I don't care. I'm myself. I'm doing what I love. And I feel empowered by doing this because there's so many negativity towards trans women. So for me to be able to step in the ring and be doing what I love is highly empowering. Now I'm getting booked in doing more shows more often, almost on a monthly basis. I do 1 or 2 shows at least. To me, has been empowering too, because now I am also trying to reach to people. Who knows who's going to be transgender and decides to go to a wrestling show and think like, hey, I wish I could be doing that. They may still be feeling insecure about stepping into that, and then I'm at that show and then it's like, oh, hey, look, there's somebody that I can identify with. There's somebody that is doing what I love to be doing, and if they can do it, why I cannot do it? So it's kind of like inspiring others to pursue their passion, to being able just to be me and be able to inspire others, something that I feel happy about.